Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our session on unpacking climate change, understanding causes, impacts, and actionable solutions. My name is Payal, and I will be your moderator for this event. We are delighted to have you all here, and we hope to make this session as informative and interactive as possible. OCOY, Odisha Conference of Youth, an initiative of Youth for Water Plus, will be taking place on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of August. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone to mute their microphones during the presentation and use the chat function to post any questions or comments. We will have a special dedicated question and answer segment towards the end of the session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Viveka Jani, Program Lead, the Climate Initiative. She is an environmentalist with over 10 years of experience working in the fields of climate change and sustainable development education and communication, research, policy, and advisory. She has worked with several organizations, including government agencies, multilateral organizations, NGOs, think tanks, research institutes, academic institutes, and engaged with a diverse spectrum of stakeholders, both in India and internationally. She was part of two intercultural knowledge exchange programs in collaboration with NGOs in Germany and Tanzania, focusing on advancing education for climate action and the SDGs. Viveka has extensive experience in climate science and environmental policy, and we are thrilled to have her share their insights with us today. Welcome, Viveka. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Payal. And thank you very much to Youth for Water Plus, the team at OCOY, Odisha, and everyone at UNICEF Odisha as well for inviting me for this very pertinent, very important session to talk about and discuss about climate change and demystify a lot of the concepts related to it. Before I start my session, I would really encourage the participants to whoever is possible to turn their video on, please do that because it's always better to be able to see faces rather than see blank screens on my laptop. So it'll be really appreciated if you could turn on your videos, as long as you're comfortable doing that. Um, so without further ado, I think I'm going to start with my presentation. Just let me know if my screen is visible to everyone. Yes, no, okay.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
All right, great. Yeah, I mean, so I know that there will be a round of dedicated question and answer towards the end of the session, and I really encourage you guys to also send in your comments and your questions in the chat, and the host team can let me know whatever questions you have. But there will be some segments within the presentation where I will ask for your interaction. So I would really appreciate if you could, respond and interact. I'm assuming everybody is either logged in via their laptop or their smartphone. So I think the interactive part of the presentation might be slightly easy for you to implement. But yeah, I'm going to start off with the presentation now. So yeah, uh, the brief that was given to you, and I'm assuming all of you are participants at the OCOY session that's going to begin shortly from the 9th to the 11th of this month. And before you kind of embark on this very important journey of talking about different topics related to action, policy, for building better climate resilience and building better solutions for climate change in Odisha specifically. I think it's very important to understand some of the jargons related to climate change and also understand what we as individuals or we as a collective of young people can do to counteract this very important, very pressing crisis that the world is facing together right now. So when we talk about, but before, okay, yeah, before we talk about climate change, I want to really ask who everyone is, how everybody's feeling. So what you could do is just quickly, either scan the QR code that's given on your screen, or go to menti.com, put in the code that's given over here, this one, or you could also go to this link. But I think be easier for you to just scroll, your camera on this QR code and go there so that we can just see who, our people are, where they're coming from, what their names are. Can we just quickly add our names to the Menti? Will that be possible? Great. I'll also share the link in the chat here for everybody. So you can go and check this out. But yeah. And the other fun bit after you go down to the next question is how you guys are feeling today. And I want to see that in terms of emojis. I don't want to see words on the screen. So get your smartphones out and show us in emojis how you're feeling today. That will give me a sense of, where the temperature is in the group, in the audience. Are you guys really happy, excited to be here? Or are you just like mildly, forced to come and join this session? Oh, somebody's feeling hot. Is it? Are you melting because of the heat? Oh, someone's feeling like an alien. That's interesting. Oh, somebody's swimming as well. Nice. Really interesting stuff coming up on the screens. Yeah, and while everybody is logging on to Menti and feeding in their response, does anybody want to share if they already work on climate action, or if they're already taking some sort of an individual action within their lives? I would really love to hear that, and I'm sure the others would love to hear that as well. I think you can just unmute yourself and you can share very briefly about the work that you're doing in climate action, or what sort of steps are you taking for living, more climate friendly in your lives, in your personal lives. Anyone?
Hi, Avyasha side.
Hello.
I have
Yeah.
a question. How
Yes, you are. You're slightly faint. Your voice is slightly faint, so you might have to speak up.
All right, sorry for the network issues. So basically, I work on the interconnectedness of climate, gender, and mental health, and I have been conducting awareness sessions based on that. And currently, I'm involved in a project, climate positive project with the CSR part of Mercedes Benz. So that's how it's been going. But primarily, it's more about awareness that I do. Yeah, so that would be it.
Lovely.
Hello.
Anyone? Yes.
Yeah, so actually, my name is Sanskar, and I have been working on climate since I was on in class 8. Initially I worked with Fridays for the Future Odisha, where
Mm-hmm.
I like as a part of the event management team, I designed something called Sabuja Sammelan. In Odia, it is called Green Conclave. So where we used to like it was a small program where we used to bring students from different schools, colleges. It used to mostly happen with government ITS, and we used to aware them about environment. Plus, we also used to listen their other issues, to just to encourage them to come to the event. Like if they have some problem in their hostel, college, or something, like we used to
Yeah.
get it done solved for them, so that they will be interested to come to us, and then we could aware them. Like, anyways, we have to do something for them. And then took a small break for my board exams. Then I joined Bakul Foundation. Presently, I'm working primarily for Bakul and Youth for Water Plus. At Bakul,
Sorry.
we run a campaign called My Tree. which has been running from last 15 years, and I am a part now, where like we say my table, my book, my chair. It is like building a personal connection with trees. It is like saying my tree. For example, like you plant our grandparents got like for example, a person has lost his or her grandparents. So in his or her memory, they plant a tree. For example, you like go to a wedding. Instead of gifting something else, you gift trees. It is because it is a gift that will grow. And also also we have
That's really sweet.
like
Yeah.
also mobilizing people to become plant parents. Like we're parenting a plant, adopting a plant. Like they plant a tree, they take care of it. So this is something that we do. And mostly I have been working on the campaign part only, and I'm still learning. I am just I'm still learning.
That's lovely. Very interesting work. We can take one more person's experience of working in climate action, and then I
Hello,
think we
ma'am.
should also start with the session. Yes, I hear somebody else's voice.
Hello, ma'am. Myself, Sanskriti Balbantai.
Yeah,
I'm
hi
currently,
Sanskriti. You might have to speak a little louder.
I'm currently pursuing my bachelor's degree in Sustainable Development Honors at Exam University, Bhubaneswar. So last year, I wrote a research paper on the impact of climate change on women farmers of the tribal community of Koraput district of Odisha. So in that paper, I suggest them to use climate resilient crops and cultivate it more so that they will be able to generate a revenue throughout the year, which will impact in the economic status directly, as well as maintain a circulatory food system in their community. So I did that last year. I also present that paper at the National Rice Research Institute, which is situated in Cuttack.
Nice. Thank you, Sanskriti. Okay. Um, That's lovely. I'm very glad that there are people who are already working in this space. Um, but as I understand, I think there are also people who are quite new to this space who still don't know, how they can implement, effective climate action, or how they can be a part of a climate action movement or participate in, very effective, practical climate solutions in their communities, in their schools or colleges. So that's what this session is about, where, we'll just be discussing what climate change is, what causes climate change, what are the impacts that, are being faced across the world, but also in our country, in Odisha, and, also how, as individuals, we can take some sort of, step towards mitigating climate change, or solving this problem more effectively, and also how can we come together as a community to push climate action efforts forward. And in order to understand all of these things, we need to demystify some of the very heavy scientific jargons that we hear about climate change, because it sounds very daunting, but it's not that scary, or it's not that daunting, which is what we're here to discuss today. And you'll be talking about a lot of these terms in the coming 3 days at the conference as well. I know that you're also going to dive deep into strategizing an action plan, and recommend, give recommendations to your local government as well, and on how they can improve their efforts for climate action. So, in order to do all of these things, and in order to dive into those discussions, we'll talk about, some of the terms related to climate change. So before we do that, I'm assuming that you know what the difference between climate and weather is, right? You can just put that in the chat. If you know what climate with the difference between climate and weather is, just do a thumbs up. If you don't know, then do a thumbs down. That would just give me an indication about, whether this is like basic school science subject in school, whether you guys are aware of it or not. But I'm sure that everybody has experienced some form of extreme weather, whether it's in the form of heat, whether it's in the form of rains, But I know that everybody has felt heat, right? Because we're reading about it, we're experiencing ourselves. And it's not something that's happened, only recently. It's something that's been happening for a few decades now, and consistently the temperature has been rising. If you see the graph over here, what this shows is that from the year, like from the 1800s, which is like centuries ago, to now, more recently in our 2020s, series, there has been a very stark difference in the temperature that the world is feeling, and which is, something that we call global warming. And I'll come to that in a bit. But, why is this global warming happening all of a sudden? Is this something that, just occurs naturally, or is this something that, we are causing? Is this something that's just happening because it's just our bad luck, and we are facing it right now all of a sudden? Well, it's because of something that we call the greenhouse effect. And before we talk about the greenhouse effect, I just want to talk about, the difference between weather and climate. So weather is something that we feel at a very short-term level. So right now, for example, most of the country is dealing with a weather that is slightly warm, humid, there's rainfall. It's not too hot and not too dry like it is, in June, but it's more, towards the muggy side. It's more humid. It because it's raining, but it's also very hot, so it's very sweaty for everybody. So a very local, a very short-term impact or the short-term effect of atmospheric changes in our surrounding is something that is, related to weather. But when we go towards the climate side, that's something that happens over a long period of time. Usually it's across decades, so 30 years or more is when you talk about a climate. And when I talk about climates, you might have heard about terms like tropical climate or arid climates or, cold climates or tundras, which are extremely cold regions. All of these places have their own specific weather conditions across the year, which are very localized, which are very, that change probably day by day, but their climate remains generally the same. So in India, for example, our climate is, more towards a tropical climate, right? It's slightly warm. It's not too cold. If we've got our, we've got enough wet days and rainy days. I think somebody's microphone is on. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I was talking about greenhouse effect. Yeah. So climate is something that happens over a larger area. It is not very local. So it happens over a larger area. So we talk about, say, the Indian subcontinent, or we talk about Southeast Asia, or we talk about, Europe, or we talk about South America. So all of these regions, which are much, much larger than, say, just Bhubaneswar or just Delhi or just Mumbai, they are on a larger scale, and it's across decades. So that is what is related to, climate. And then changes in the climate is what causes changes in the seasons. And there are a lot of different, atmospheric changes, astronomical changes like movements of the sun, movement, irradiation coming from the sun, movement of the earth, rotation of the earth. There are a lot of these things that, cause or play a role in changing the climate. But what we are going to be talking about today, specifically in terms of climate, is the greenhouse gas effect. Now, the greenhouse gas effect, what we've learned in schools mostly, is it basically just talks about what the man-made greenhouse gas effect is doing. But it's very interesting to learn about the fact that the greenhouse effect is not something that humans have caused or humans have introduced on Earth. Rather, it's something that has occurred naturally for centuries and millennia to come. It's been happening even before humans existed on Earth. It happened even when the dinosaurs were there. It happened even when the first organism was there. It happened even before there was any life on Earth. So what happens in this greenhouse effect is essentially when the sun's rays are coming into the Earth's atmosphere, and the atmosphere, I'm guessing you understand, is the layer of gases around the Earth. And इसमें गैसेस में नाइट्रोजन है, ऑक्सीजन है, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड है, बहुत अलग अलग टाइप के गैसेस है जिसके बारे में हमने सुना है, हमने पढ़ा है इसके बारे में हमारी साइंस की क्लास में. तो जब सन के रेज अंदर आते हैं तो एटमॉस्फेयर में जो ये गैसेस है ना, पहले दे कम डाउन टू दिस अर्थ सरफेस. सम ऑफ दीज सन रेज जो क्लाउड्स हैं या गैसेस हैं उनके पार्टिकल्स को टच करके रिफ्लेक्ट बैक हो जाते हैं. But कुछ जो sun rays हैं, they come to the Earth's surface, they get absorbed by the Earth's surface, and then the Earth's surface re-emits them. वापस से वो जो energy है जो उसने absorb किया है, उसको वो re-emit करता है in the form of heat. और ये जो heat है, ये जब बाहर जा रही होती है ना atmosphere से, उस time पे there are some gases जिसको हम greenhouse gases बोलते हैं, वो ये heat को trap कर देता है. और वो हीट को जब ये ट्रैप कर देता है तो वो एटमॉस्फेयर और अर्थ के बीच में जो टेम्परेचर है उसको बढ़ा देता है, बिकॉज इट्स हॉट, लाइक द एनर्जी इज हॉट, एंड दैट इज व्हाट कॉजेस व्हाट वी कॉल द ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट. अब जो नेचुरली अकरिंग ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट है वो बहुत सालों से चलता आ रहा है, और उसी की वजह से अर्थ का टेम्परेचर ऐसा है कि यहाँ पे इंसान, जानवर, पक्षी, फिशेज, ये सब जी सकते हैं, क्योंकि बिकॉज ऑफ द नेचुरल ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट द अर्थ्स एवरेज टेम्परेचर इज अराउंड 15 डिग्री सेल्सियस पूरे अर्थ का. अगर ये नेचुरल ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट नहीं होता, our temperature would have been somewhere in the range of -18 degrees Celsius to -20 degrees Celsius, which is very cold, and it is clearly very it's clearly a condition जहाँ पे no living creature would be able to live. But what has happened since the 1950s to 1900s, um, there was this massive change in how humans lived. There was something what we called the Industrial Revolution. जब हमने ट्रेन्स इंट्रोड्यूस किए, जब हमने हाथ से काम करने की जगह we started using machineries, we started producing things in the factories. जब गाड़ियां इंट्रोड्यूस होने लगी और वो गाड़ियों को चलाने के लिए we started extracting something called fossil fuels, using those to run our factories, using those things to run our trains and our cars and our machinery. And all of a sudden what happened is that ये natural greenhouse effect का balance पूरा हिल गया, because हम atmosphere में ज्यादा gases डालने लगे जो ये greenhouse gas effect cause करते हैं. And what are some of these greenhouse gases? Do you know? I mean, आपको पता है कि कौन से greenhouse gases हैं जो atmosphere में है जिसकी वजह से ये जो effect है वो ज्यादा intensify हो रहा है? You can put it in the chat. Yes, there's carbon dioxide, which is the most famous greenhouse of all, and then there's methane as well. उसके अलावा किसी का नाम जानते हैं आप? Methane, CO2 हो गया. Ozone to some extent is also a greenhouse gas, that's right. Carbon monoxide, not so much. Carbon monoxide is not really a greenhouse gas. CFC का full form भी लिख लीजिए तो everybody understands what CFC is. Chlorofluorocarbons, that's right. Anything else? कोई ऐसा गैस जो नेचुरली भी अकर होता है, क्योंकि ये CFC जो है ये तो हमारे ह्यूमंस की वजह से कॉज्ड है. Nitrous oxide, that's right. Water vapor is also, I mean, water vapor is something जो हमारे steam में होता है, वो भी जब ज्यादा प्रोड्यूस होता है और जो भी ज्यादा रिलीज होता है तो that can also intensify this greenhouse effect. So essentially that's the difference between natural greenhouse effect and man-made greenhouse effect. And the problem is कि ये man-made greenhouse effect जो है अब इतना ज्यादा बढ़ गया है कि अब उसकी वजह से जो क्लाइमेट, मैंने जैसे बोला था कि नेचुरल ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट की वजह से हमारा क्लाइमेट बैलेंस में रहता है, अब ये ह्यूमन ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट की वजह से दैट बैलेंस हैज शिफ्टेड. व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इज द क्लाइमेट हैज गॉन हेवायर, एंड somebody's audio is still on and आप कुछ बोल नहीं रहे हैं पर आपके बैकग्राउंड में कोई लोग बोल रहे हैं, which is causing a disruption.
Ma'am, if you can call out the names Suresh. Okay, ma'am, it's on mute right now. It's okay.
Okay.
Continue.
Yeah, no, I can't really see whose it is, but I can just hear it in the background. But yeah, now it's cool. Thanks. Yeah. So because of this human or man-made greenhouse effect, the climate has completely lost its balance, which is what is causing climate change. And climate change का एक बहुत important part parcel, एक बहुत important result जो है वो है global warming. Global warming is very simple to understand. दुनिया में एवरेज टेम्परेचर है वो बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ रहा है एंड उसका प्रूफ है हमारे पास क्योंकि नासा आप लोग जानते होंगे नासा इज अ ह्यूज स्पेस रिसर्च ऑर्गेनाइजेशन दैट्स बेस्ड इन द यूएस और उनके हर साल उनका एक इट्स लाइक अ प्रोजेक्शन इट्स लाइक अ क्लाइमेट मॉडल जो वो बनाते हैं जिसमें वो 1800s मतलब जो हमारा बेसलाइन है जब इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन शुरू हुआ था उस टाइम के कंपैरिजन में ये अभी के टू 2022 23 24 के कंपैरिजन में अर्थ का जो टेम्परेचर है कितना बड़ा है दिस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो शोकेसेस दैट एंड इट्स क्वाइट इंटरेस्टिंग टू सी टेम्परेचर चेंजेस so as you can see in the scale also that's given over here blue color indicates a colder temperature and as you go towards the reds that's when the temperature increase is being displayed. And this is how it is right now. I can quickly go again. This is how the temperature was in the early 1900s. ये आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पे पोल्स पे टेम्परेचर बढ़ रहा है and this is where we are now in the 2000s and 2020s and this is the temperature currently which has significantly increased and जो टेम्परेचर 1900s में था जो बेसलाइन है और जो टेम्परेचर आज है उसके अंदर कुछ ऑलमोस्ट 1.2 डिग्रीज का चेंज ऑलरेडी आ चुका है अब बोलने में 1.2 ज्यादा लगता नहीं है पर हर एक डेसिमल का जो चेंज आता है टेम्परेचर में उसकी वजह से क्लाइमेट में जो चेंज आता है उसकी वजह से अर्थ के बाकी सारे जो प्रोसेसेस हैं चाहे वो ओशन करंट्स है या विंड करंट्स है या मॉनसून पैटर्न्स है वो सब में चेंज आने लगता है एंड सिर्फ माइनर चेंजेस नहीं आते हैं काफी ड्रास्टिक चेंजेस आ जाते हैं विच इज वाई इवन अ increase of 1.2 degrees Celsius since the 1900s until now, a huge concern for humankind because it can mean कि हम potentially ऐसे रास्ते पे चल रहे हैं जहां पे अगर हम एक पॉइंट तक पहुंच गए which is the point of no return उसके बाद फिर कोई भी चीज जो हम जिसको नॉर्मल मानते हैं वो हम भूल जाएंगे क्योंकि वो हम फिर रिवर्स नहीं कर पाएंगे we'll reach a point जहां पे we can't really change the climate to a point where it was earlier जैसे पहले हुआ करता था एंड वो जो पॉइंट है जिसको पॉइंट ऑफ नो रिटर्न बोलते हैं उसको एक टिपिंग पॉइंट बोलते हैं इसका मतलब कि ये कि आपके आप मान लीजिए आपके टेबल पे आपने ग्लास रखा है और ग्लास में पानी भरा हुआ है और अब उसको मैं अगर थोड़ा सा हिलाऊंगी तो थोड़ा पानी छलकेगा उसमें से पर अगर मैं उसको गिरा दूंगी इफ आई टिप इट ओवर all the water is going to spill out of it and वो पानी फिर गया that's wasted you can't really collect that water again and say कि हाँ मेरी ग्लास भर गई है वापस से so basically we are pushing the earth systems to a point जहाँ पे we are tipping it over जिसके बाद we can't really bring it back so that's what's point of no return or the tipping point which is what we are causing right now and अगर हमने हमारा जो टेम्परेचर है उसको 1.5 डिग्रीज या 2 डिग्रीज से तक भी पहुंचा दिया 1.5 is also quite a difficult situation पर अगर 2 डिग्री का भी चेंज आ गया है 1900s और 2024 एंड बियॉन्ड में तो वो 2 डिग्री का जो टेम्परेचर राइज है that will cause multiple tipping points across the world जिसके बाद हम we can't go back to an earth the way we knew it So what is that cause this, human induced or man made greenhouse effect? जैसे मैंने मेंशन किया पहले कि इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन में बहुत सारे चेंजेस आए थे. वी स्टार्टेड प्रोड्यूसिंग थिंग्स इन द फैक्ट्रीज इन इंडस्ट्रीज. तो ये इंडस्ट्रीज को हम कोल से जला के पावर करने लगे या पेट्रोलियम बेस्ड फ्यूल्स से उसको पावर करने लगे. तो इंडस्ट्रियल प्रोडक्शन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है, दैट हैज ड्रास्टिकली इंक्रीज्ड सिंस द 1900s until now. So industries are a huge cause of emissions causing greenhouse effect. There's obviously energy production. Energy production where I'm not only talking about electricity production, but I'm also talking about energy that is used in industries, but the energy that is used for say cooking or heating. जैसे हम natural gas या LPG use करते हैं हमारे खाने के लिए. Those also produce greenhouse gases. कुछ कुछ जगह पे we use kerosene or we use coal to burn to produce energy to produce heat. Those are causing greenhouse gases. The electricity that we use in our houses, most of the electricity that comes in our houses is produced in power plants that burn coal. I do agree कि हमने काफी सारा shift किया है towards renewable energy as well. बट अभी भी हमारा काफी ज्यादा रिलायंस डिपेंडेंस है ऑन कोल बेस्ड इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, जिसके बिना हमारे सिस्टम्स जो है वो पावर नहीं हो पाएंगे. there's obviously infrastructure and development activities. अगर आप देखेंगे पहले के जमाने में और अभी के जमाने में, all you see are all these huge buildings. There's a lot of urbanization that's happened. सब जगह there's become like a concrete jungle. So there's more development in terms of infrastructures and buildings and all. But in the process of creating this development, we are also producing a lot of greenhouse gases. There is land use change and mass production of agriculture byproduct or agricultural produce. As you know, हमारा world population is only on the rise. It's just increasing steadily year by year. और इतने सारे population को खाना खिलाने के लिए हमारे जो फॉरेस्ट वाले लैंड है वो फॉरेस्टेड लैंड को हम काट के उस पे एग्रीकल्चर लैंड बना रहे हैं, ताकि हम उस पे अनाज खाने के फ्रूट्स या वेजिटेबल्स उगा सके, ताकि हम हमारी ये ग्रोइंग पॉपुलेशन को फीड कर सके. उसके अलावा काफी हमारे जो नेचुरल लैंड्स हैं, फॉरेस्टेड लैंड्स हैं, उसको हम काट के ये इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट करने के लिए उसको काट रहे हैं. So lot of change is happening in the way our land has been allocated. Forested land is reducing. A lot of natural ecosystems are dying, and not a lot of natural ecosystems are being changed for human activities. And because I've talked about industrial agriculture and mass production of agricultural produce, there's obviously rapid consumerism. Um, because everything has become so easily accessible, हम लोग को लगता है कि we can also consume a lot of stuff. We can consume a lot of food, waste a lot of food. अच्छा मैंने ये कपड़ा पहना, मैंने 2 दिन पहन लिया इसको, I can't wear it again, I'm going to throw it off. So these are all part and parcel of consumerism, whether it's food wastage, whether it's waste of fuel, whether it's waste of our clothes. We change our clothes almost every month or after a few months. These are all examples of rapid consumerism and unconscious consumerism, which we've all been guilty of doing. And I admit until a few years ago, until I was very deeply involved in this sort of action, I also did not really think about the kind of things that I'm buying, or the kind of things that I'm buying, not using for too long, and then throwing it away. So as a child, as a kid, even I remember that I've done that. So we've all been guilty of it at some point of time in our lives. And of course, there's transportation. A lot of our transportation is now slowly shifting towards EVs, yeah, electric vehicles, जिसको बोलते हैं, or we're looking at alternative fuel sources like hydrogen, but a heavy part of our transportation is still dependent on fossil fuels, whether it's diesel, whether it's petrol. So we're still using these ancient fossil fuels or polluting fossil fuels for our transportation options. And all of these human activities have been drastically increasing over the years, which is why the greenhouse gas emissions, because of these activities, have also been drastically increasing. And as you can see from this chart, the greenhouse emissions from all the different sectors. So heat and electricity are producing the most amount of greenhouse gases. Then is the change in land use for agriculture or other activities, which is the next in line. There's industrial activity over here, transportation that produces 14% of the GHGs, other energy requirements, food waste and buildings are then over here, which seems quite little, but that's also causing quite a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So why exactly is, this man-made climate change such a big problem? Why are we, suddenly talking about it? Why are we having all these conferences about it? Why are we having this workshop to talk about this? The reason is, like I showed you in that video earlier, that the world is heating. The global warming of the earth has increased so much that even scientists could not imagine कि इतना जल्दी इतना ज्यादा हमारा अर्थ गर्म हो जाएगा. और अगर हम देखें ये हमारे खुद के लाइफ टाइम में ही हुआ है. ओवर द पास्ट 10 years अगर हम देखते हैं तो कंसिस्टेंटली हर साल टेम्परेचर का हमने एक रिकॉर्ड ब्रेक किया. अ, अभी 2 साल पहले 3 साल पहले कहीं पे 50 डिग्रीज का टेम्परेचर था, और अब अभी जाके देखो तो दिल्ली में समर्स में 52 53 डिग्री सेल्सियस. 52 53 डिग्री सेल्सियस is not funny. That's not something that we ever imagined. That's like halfway to like the boiling point of water. एंड हमारे गीजर का टेम्परेचर उतना हाई नहीं रखते हम जितना हमारा एटमोसफेयर का टेम्परेचर हो रहा है. सो द 10 मोस्ट हॉटेस्ट years of the world on the record have all been in the past decade. एंड अभी तक का हमारे पास डेटा आया नहीं है 2024 का, बट इट इज लाइकली दैट जून 2024 और जुलाई 2024 have again crossed that threshold. We've broken another record, and this is again going to be the warmest year on record. And that is why climate change and global warming is a huge concern. That is why it's very important to take action, take steps to stop this, reverse it as much as we can before we reach that tipping point, and then we're just going to regret it. So when we talk about climate change, it's not only causing global warming. Global warming is definitely a huge impact of climate change. But apart from that, and in addition to global warming, it's also causing a lot of other things. Because मैंने जैसे बोला, it is completely throwing the climate systems of the world out of balance. तो उसकी वजह से हमारे seasons भी बदल रहे हैं. उसकी वजह से हमारे बारिश जिस तरह से पहले होती थी, मॉनसून जिस तरह से पहले होते थे, वैसे हो ही नहीं रहे हैं. देयर आर हेवी रेनफॉल्स इन सम रीजन्स जहाँ की सब, देयर आर अदर रीजन्स जहाँ पे एकदम सूखा पड़ा है. देयर इज ड्राउट लाइक कंडीशंस. देयर आर सम प्लेसेस जहाँ पे बहुत बहुत थोड़े टाइम में बहुत जल्दी बारिश होने की वजह से और बहुत ज्यादा बारिश होने की वजह से देयर आर फ्लैश फ्लड्स. बट सम प्लेसेस आर फेसिंग हीट वेव्स जहाँ पे लोग गर्मी की वजह से दे आर facing health issues or facing, exhaustion or even dying, right? There are some places jahan pe there is extreme weather events such as cyclones and hurricanes. You also belong to a state that has experienced one of the most intense cyclones in the most recent years. Um, but there are also places jahan pe there are extreme cold waves. A few years back, the entire European continent and North American regions of Canada and North America, I mean North USA, they all had this very intense cold waves where because of a polar vortex, जिसकी वजह से the temperatures had gone down so much that they had never experienced that sort of cold weather in their region ever. So it's completely मैडनिंग के कितने चेंजेस है। बीच में हमने सुना था दुबई में स्नोफॉल हो रही है, प्लेसेस इन हिमाचल जहाँ पे उनको कभी भी दे हैव नेवर फेल्ट द नीड फॉर मस्कीटोज रिपेलेंट का उनको कभी जरूरत नहीं था, बिकॉज मस्कीटो इज समथिंग दैट वी एसोसिएटेड विथ wet and hot climates. That's something that happens in coastal regions. That's something that happens जहाँ बहुत पानी है, जहाँ बहुत humid है, जहाँ बहुत गर्मी है. But all of a sudden, people in Himachal, people in Uttarakhand are complaining about mosquitoes, which they never ever thought about, which their ancestors had never ever worried about. So all of these are part and parcel of climate change. These are all either direct or indirect impacts of climate change, which are happening right now, which are happening right in front of us. We are experiencing it in some form or the other. And that is why climate change is a huge concern. And like I mentioned, there are some impacts of climate change which are very direct on the nose, but there are some impacts of it which are very indirect as well. जैसे कि मैं जब हीट वेव्स की बात करती हूँ, हीट वेव्स ऑब्वियसली कॉज अ लॉट ऑफ हीट एग्जॉशन, बाहर चल नहीं सकते या बाहर 5 मिनट भी खड़े नहीं रह सकते हैं। बट उसकी वजह से ये भी होता है कि कुछ लोग जो बाहर जाए बिना उनकी जिंदगी आगे नहीं बढ़ सकती, बिकॉज दे आर वर्किंग आउटसाइड, दे हैव टू स्टे आउटसाइड, they deal with a lot of health impacts. Like I mentioned about mosquitoes and other animals that are vectors to some of the diseases, they all thrive in an environment that is warmer, that is more humid, which is what the world is facing collectively. एंड वो वेक्टर्स जितना ज्यादा बढ़ रहे हैं, उनके जो पैथोजेंस हैं या जो वायरस है या बैक्टीरिया है जिनको वो हार्बर करते हैं अपनी बॉडी में, वो ज्यादा इंक्रीज हो रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से diseases that are being caused, whether it's malaria, whether it's dengue, whether it's any of these different, diseases that are caused by vector-borne viruses or vector-borne pathogens, उनका नंबर भी इंक्रीज हो रहा है. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट, क्योंकि पोल्यूशन इतना बढ़ रहा है, क्योंकि ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड चाहे है, या मीथेन है फॉर एग्जाम्पल, all of these things also change the air quality around us. And वो air quality बदलने की वजह से we also deal with a lot of lung disorders. We also deal with a lot of breathing disorders. The number of cases of asthma in people with weaker lungs or children suffering from breathing disorders has increased drastically over the years. And there are a lot of other plethora of indirect impacts of climate change as well on humans, on health. A lot of people lose their homes because of extreme weather events and they have to evacuate and move to other places. And then they are deemed as climate refugees, which is just not a pleasant experience for anybody, right? To leave your own home and go somewhere else and try and build a new life in a place that's completely alien to you. That really does not sound like something that anybody should be facing, especially because of something that they've not even caused themselves, because of something जो उनकी गलती है भी नहीं. So there are all of these direct and indirect impacts of climate change. और इंडिया में इसमें से हम कितने सारे impacts जो हैं already face कर चुके हैं. According to recent reports, last year, almost 86% of the days in the first 9 months itself had experienced some form of extreme weather event across the country. And here are the statistics, which are just, these are not small numbers. These are quite large numbers that are increasing every year. And which is why we should really be talking about this and, taking some action against this. And apart from India, even Odisha has faced a lot of these impacts. And ये आपसे बेहतर कोई जानता नहीं होगा इसके बारे में. Being a coastal state, you obviously deal with intense cyclones year after year, sometimes multiple cyclones within the same year as well. Sea level rise is a very pressing issue for all our coastal states, including Odisha. Heat waves is a huge concern during the summer period as well. Um, and one of the most recent deadliest heat waves was also experienced in one of the districts in Odisha as well. And it's just increasing every year. And while the government of Odisha has already created policy action and policy plans for mitigating this, there is still a lot of action that needs to come, and a lot of motivation, but a lot of push that needs to come from the citizens, from the young people, to escalate and to make these plans more ambitious, and make your state, make our country more sustainable. We have all of these plans that are great on the surface, but we know that we have the potential to do much better, have much more ambitious climate action plans than what we currently have. So let's talk about, what are these climate solutions, right? What is it that we really need to ask our governments to do? So, at the very basic level, when I talk about extreme weather events of climate change, you'd say कि ठीक है, cyclone आ रहा है, तो we deal with the cyclone. Heat wave आ रहा है, we deal with the heat wave. And that's what we'll call like problem solving. Basically, जो problem है, हम उसका solution निकाल के वो problem solve कर रहे हैं. तो अगर कोई disaster occur कर रहा है, चाहे वो cyclone है, या heat wave है, या flood है, उसको हम we try and reduce the risk of that disaster. We manage that disaster first, and then we see कि अच्छा आगे जाके ये disaster अगर आने के chances हैं, होने के chances हैं, तो उसका risk हम किस तरह से reduce करें. So that is basically एक छोटे problem को solve करना, right? But at a larger level, what is required is what we call either climate adaptation or climate mitigation. And I'll talk about this more in the coming slides. But then after climate adaptation and climate mitigation, there's something called resilience. I will also discuss about resilience in the next slide. But just to explain this term, resilience is, if you're dealing with a problem over and over and over again, either you can get used to that problem, or you can become strong enough to deal with that problem in a more effective manner. So if somebody is troubling you, for example, you can choose to either ignore them, or you can choose to stand up to them and say, hello, listen, stop troubling me anymore. Or you could probably, go to an authority and talk about it and say, this person is really troubling me. Can you deal with this? Right? So in that sense, that's in some way called resilience, because you are taking into account what your problem is, and you are taking the steps to either remove that problem or to solve that problem in some way. And then the final term that we'll talk about is sustainability. And I think sustainable development, sustainability, सबने कहीं ना कहीं सुना है, because it's such a buzzword these days. हर news channel में sustainability के बारे में बात करते हैं. And it is a very important topic for sure. It's just that I think it's being used quite offhandedly nowadays, instead of understanding the true meaning of sustainability as well. So let's talk about what mitigation is. Mitigation, in its very basic sense, is to remove or reduce the greenhouse gases that cause this climate change. And how we can do that is either we stop our emissions, either we take actions to not produce these greenhouse gases, or we try and remove the greenhouse gases that are already there in the atmosphere. Can somebody, can people put in the chat how they feel we can achieve mitigation either by stopping greenhouse emissions or removing greenhouse gases? Do you know of examples where, we can do mitigation? You can put it in the chat. Hello, people. मिटिगेशन का मतलब है कि जो ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस हैं उनको हम उनके एमिशंस हम कम करें. तो या तो हम वो एमिशंस होने से रोके, नए एमिशंस होने से रोके, या तो हम करंट एमिशंस जो है ऑलरेडी एटमॉस्फेयर के अंदर हवा में जो है उसको हम किसी तरह से रिड्यूस करने की कोशिश करें. तो आप लोग कोई एग्जांपल्स जानते हैं जिसमें मिटिगेशन हो सकता है? कोई भी एग्जाम्पल. और ये टेस्ट नहीं है, मैं आपकी टेस्ट लेने की कोशिश नहीं करी, मैं सिर्फ समझना चाहती हूँ कि आपको पता है इसके बारे में या मुझे और एक्सप्लेन करना पड़ेगा इसके बारे में. ओके, somebody said plantation of what? कोई भी प्लांट लगा सकते हैं? Okay, somebody's put carbon capture and storage, responsible consumption. Anything else? Plastic waste management, right? Reforestation, afforestation, sustainable resource use. Any other examples? A very, very important aspect of mitigation, जिसमें इंडिया बहुत आगे है already. Less fossil fuel use, yeah, but what else? अगर हम fossil fuel का use कम कर देंगे तो उसके सामने option क्या है हमारे लिए? हमारी बिजली कहाँ से आएगी? हमारी एनर्जी कहाँ से आएगी? हमारा ट्रांसपोर्टेशन कैसे चलेगा? यूज ऑफ रिन्यूएबल एनर्जीज, राइट? किसी ने सोलर लिखा था, ओके ओके. सो यू गाइस डू नो अ लॉट ऑफ दीज एग्जांपल्स फॉर मिटिगेशन, जिसके अंदर ऑब्वियसली देयर इज थिंग्स लाइक we talk about use of renewable energy, and by renewable I mean जो naturally occur energy sources है, और जो अपने आप ही रीजेनरेट हो सकते हैं. फॉसिल फ्यूल्स, एज यू नो, फॉसिल फ्यूल्स का मतलब है कार्बन या पेट्रोल या डीजल या नेचुरल गैस, ये सारे एग्जांपल्स हैं फॉसिल फ्यूल्स के. और इनको रीजेनरेट होने में बहुत बहुत ज्यादा टाइम लगता है, मतलब मिलेनियम्स लगते हैं उसको टू बी एबल टू रीजेनरेट. इसका मतलब ये है कि हम अगर सारा फॉसिल फ्यूल इस वक्त खत्म कर देंगे तो वी विल हैव टू वेट फॉर लाइक thousands of years for that fossil fuel to get regenerated, which we really don't have the time to do that, right? So what is our alternative? We obviously switch to something that we call renewables. Renewables are एनर्जी सोर्सेज जो नेचुरली अकर होते हैं और जिनको रीजनरेट रिन्यू होने में ज्यादा टाइम लगता नहीं है. तो एग्जांपल्स हैं सोलर या विंड या वाटर या वेव्स या टाइडल एनर्जी या जियोथर्मल एनर्जी. ये सारे एग्जांपल्स हैं रेन्यूएबल एनर्जी सोर्सेज के. तो व्हाट वी कैन डू इज के फॉसिल फ्यूल्स का यूज कम करके हम ये रेन्यूएबल एनर्जीज पे शिफ्ट हो सकते हैं. साथ ही साथ जैसे कि आपने मेंशन किया, हम हमारा कंजम्पशन जो है, चाहे वो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी का कंजम्पशन है या फ्यूल का कंजम्पशन है या खाने का कंजम्पशन है या प्रोडक्ट्स का कंजम्पशन है, उसको हम रिड्यूस कर सकते हैं. जिसकी हमें सिर्फ रिक्वायरमेंट है सिर्फ वो कर सकते हैं. एंड as soon as you reduce the consumption of certain products, and that happens at a mass level, automatically companies are forced to also reduce the production, right? Because they are, इट्स अ वेरी सिंपल थिंग ऑफ डिमांड एंड सप्लाई. अगर डिमांड होगा तो इंडस्ट्रीज उसको सप्लाई करने के लिए प्रोडक्शन इंक्रीज करेंगी. अगर डिमांड कम होगा तो ऑटोमेटिकली सप्लाई कम हो जाएगा. तो सस्टेनेबल कंजम्पशन प्रोडक्शन गो हैंड इन हैंड इन दैट वे. सो to reduce these greenhouse emissions, there are these examples. But जो greenhouse emissions already atmosphere में हवा में है present, उसको भी reduce कर सकते हैं. आपने जैसे बोला reforestation करके, afforestation करके, green जो trees हैं जो ज्यादा कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, ज्यादा greenhouse gases को absorb कर सकती हैं, उन सबको ज्यादा प्लांट करना चाहिए rather than planting trees जिसका ज्यादा कोई कार्बन कैप्चरिंग का पोटेंशियल कम है जिसका. देन देर आर सम टेक्नोलॉजीज दैट आर कॉल्ड कार्बन कैप्चर एंड स्टोरेज, जैसे किसी ने मेंशन किया था, जिसमें जो एटमॉस्फेयर में कार्बन है या तो उसको स्टोर करके उसको डीप इनटू द अर्थ, इनटू रॉक्स, यू स्टोर इट इनटू द पोर्स बिटवीन द रॉक्स. और देर इज कार्बन कैप्चर एट द इंडस्ट्रियल लेवल, जहाँ पे जब इंडस्ट्रीज में से कार्बन के एमिशंस निकल रहे हैं, पोल्यूशन हो रहा है उसका, तो वो बाहर एटमॉस्फेयर में जाए उससे पहले कार्बन कैप्चर कर लिया जाता है या कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड उसमें से खींच लिया जाता है और उसको फिर प्रोसेस करके उसको किसी और चीज में यूज किया जाता है. So there is carbon capture and storage that can either remove the CO2 from industrial emissions, or it can remove CO2 that is already present in the atmosphere. And that's all part and parcel of mitigation. Now, the next thing is adaptation, which is basically जो मैंने जैसे बोला कि आदत डाल देना. तो अडेप्टेशन इज कि अगर क्लाइमेट चेंज के इम्पैक्ट्स हो रहे हैं तो तो वो इम्पैक्ट से एडजस्ट कर देने का उसको वी बिकम यूज टू इट इन अ वे दैट इट डज नॉट affect us in a negative manner too much, right? We are adjusting to it in a way that we don't feel the harmful impacts of that particular event, of that particular climactic event. And in the process, we, either we reduce our vulnerability or our risk to that impact, or we manage that impact in a more effective manner, so that आगे जाके अगर वही event वापस होता है तो हमें उसके negative impacts कम feel. And adaptation is a cyclic process जिसमें adaptation करने के लिए पहले you have to understand what is the problem that is causing this impact, or what is this why is this impact occurring in our region happening to us, and then creating a solution that is very specific. Adaptation जो है is a very local, is a very contextual solution to climate change, कि जो impact आप face कर रहे हैं वो impact को किस तरह से solve करना है. That is what adaptation deals with. So you need to think about what is this being caused due to, what is the not climate change, but what is the local thing that is aggravating this impact. उसको किस तरह से हम solve कर सकते हैं. अगर कोई adjustments करने हैं तो उसको adjust कैसे करेंगे, and उसको फिर better किस तरह से बना सकते हैं. So it is a very cyclic process जो continued रहती. And then there's something called climate resilience, which I mentioned earlier as well. जिसमें what we are doing is not only are we adapting to the impacts of climate change, but we are also becoming more um, we're becoming more effective in dealing with it in the future. So that what happens is that आगे जाके if that impact is ever occurring, or if that event is ever occurring, then it doesn't take as much time. We're not starting from 0 and going to 100 again, but rather we build our capacity to a point where we don't need to go from 0 to 100, where we can be like, I already know how to deal with this. I can go from 50 to 100, or I can go from 70 to 100. So climate resilience is where we're improving our capacity, our capability to deal with that climate impact more effectively in the future. And that is what is very important right now, is that we already know that these impacts we faced in the past, and these are the impacts that we're going to face in the future. So it's up to us now to improve our capacity. हमारी क्षमता को सुधारना हमारी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, कि वही इम्पैक्ट्स अगर फ्यूचर में आते हैं तो हम उसको किस तरह से बेटर डील कर सके, कम टाइम में डील कर सके, और इफेक्टिवली या एफिशिएंटली उसके साथ डील कर सके, इन ऑल्सो इन अ वे जिसमें हमें ज्यादा नुकसान ना हो. So that is what climate resilience is. Okay, so now there's another activity. Again, get your smartphones out. You can just scan the QR code over here, or you can go to menti.com and put this code over there. And what it will do is it will give you a list of these terms that are there. And what you're supposed to do is grade whether it is a mitigation related action, or it's an adaptation related action, or if you think it is a combination of both. मतलब mitigation भी है, adaptation भी है आपके हिसाब से, वो आपको बताना है. So just put the code over here that's given on the screen. Go to menti.com and you can put the code here, or you can scan the QR code that was there here. क्या हो गया, लोग कंप्यूटर छोड़ के चले गए क्या? Why is nobody participating in this? Okay. So flood protection किसी ने बोला है कि mitigation है. Okay. आप why don't you go to menti.com and see कि ये जो options दिए गए हैं, and there are 2 slides. एक तो ये स्लाइड है, एक दूसरी स्लाइड उसके बाद में भी है। आपको सिर्फ स्क्रॉल करना है, जो आपको दिखेगा यू हैव टू जस्ट स्क्रॉल कि वो मिटिगेशन है, कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ मिटिगेशन अडेप्टेशन है या अडेप्टेशन है। यू हैव टू स्क्रॉल दैट बार। There is another slide as well. So if you click on the next slide, then you can see the other options that are there, and you do the same exercise for that as well. Okay, so the examples that we have over here, there's flood protection, which is more towards adaptation than mitigation. There's pond conservation, which would be a combination of adaptation and mitigation both, because adaptation because it's conservation of water, but mitigation also because pond में जो plants होते हैं, they also capture CO2 from the atmosphere. So pond है या बाकी water resources के जो plants है seas में, oceans में, they're all important for capturing carbon. Apart from forest के जो plants है, forest के जो trees हैं, water वाले plants are also important. So it would be a combination of both. Sustainable transportation, well, yeah, it could be a combination of both. Renewable energy would be, well, mitigation, I would say. Plant-based diets would again be a combination, but would be more towards mitigation than a combination also. Disaster management would be more towards adaptation. Mangrove restoration would be, again, a combination of mitigation and adaptation. Urban forestry would be, yes, it would be a mitigation adaptation. Electric vehicle ka use would be mitigation. अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम्स आर सिस्टम्स जो आपको किसी डिजास्टर के बारे में पहले से वार्न कर देते हैं, चाहे वो हीट वेव्स हो या साइक्लोन्स हो। तो वो पहले से वार्न करते हैं आपको कि ये इवेंट जो है या ये दुर्घटना जो है इज गोइंग टू हैपन इन सम टाइम, तो प्लीज आप प्रिपेयर्ड रहिएगा। अगर हीट वेव है तो घर में रहिएगा, साइक्लोन है तो इवैक्यूएशन का अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम होगा। द सेम वे देयर आर अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम्स फॉर फ्लड्स एज वेल. So it would be more towards the adaptation side. Conscious consumption and waste reduction would be more towards mitigation. Green buildings and infrastructure, I guess, would be a combination of mitigation and adaptation, depending on किस purpose से वो green building infrastructure बन रहा है. And energy efficiency, of course, is more towards mitigation. Okay. All right, you can continue doing this. You can continue changing your scores and playing with the scales that are there. But let's move forward with the presentation because we're also overshooting our time. So now that we've spoken about mitigation and adaptation at a more wide overview wala level, let's talk about individual level पे हम क्या कर सकते हैं. So a lot of you also mentioned activities that you're already undertaking, but those are also more towards actions for other people. But a lot of things we can change in our own personal lives as well, including, the use of the consumption of products, or the consumption of electricity. So conserving, energy, conserving electricity, wherever it's possible, choosing renewable energies or green and clean energy rather than fossil fuel based energy. ट्रांसपोर्टेशन में और माइंडफुलनेस ला सकते हैं, जहां तक हो सकता है पब्लिक ट्रांसपोर्ट यूज करें, चल के जा सकते हैं तो चल के जाएं, अगर गाड़ी से ही जाना है तो देखें कि कारपूल कर सकते हैं या नहीं. There are all of these options. Dietary changes is आप locally produced खाना खाएं, things that are not exotic, things that are not imported from other countries or other regions, क्योंकि उनको वहां लाने में भी जो ट्रांसपोर्टेशन गया है या उनको प्रोड्यूस करने में जो ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस हुए हैं, all of that causes, all of that increases your personal carbon emission as well. So dietary changes कर सकते हैं, local खाना खा सकते हैं, जितना हो सकता है plant based खाना खा सकते हैं, rather than going for very unsustainable consumption patterns या processed food को खाना कम कर सकते हैं, because उनको बनाने में फैक्ट्री में जितना मशीन का यूज होता है जिसमें से कार्बन एमिशंस होते हैं वो रिड्यूस करने के लिए नेचुरल हेल्दी फ्रेश खाना जो है वो खाना खा सकते हैं. द सेम वे लोकली प्रोड्यूस्ड प्रोडक्ट्स को ज्यादा फेवर करें, वेस्ट रिड्यूस करें जहां तक हो सकता है. आपके एरिया में अगर रिसाइकलिंग का ऑप्शन है तो रिसाइकलिंग करें. जो चीज फेंकने की हालत नहीं है उसकी या रिपेयर होके यूज हो सकती है उसको रिपेयर करके यूज करें फेंकने की जगह. किसी और को दे दीजिए जो ज्यादा जरूरतमंद है, वो रीयूज कर सकते हैं उसको. देयर आर ऑल ऑफ दीज ऑप्शंस टू रिड्यूस योर वेस्ट एज वेल. द सेम वे कपड़ों में clothes cause a lot of clothes are not very easily biodegradable. सो आप जो कपड़े हैं उसको फेंक देते हैं, वो लैंडफिल में पड़े रहते हैं और वो लैंडफिल में बाकी कचरे के साथ बस इट्स जस्ट कॉजिंग more damage to the earth, more damage to the environment, and it's just adding to climate change. So जहां तक हो सकता है natural fibers, natural fabrics को prefer करें. Don't buy clothes unnecessarily only when you require it. Very important is also in terms of governance systems. As an individual, you may feel that you can't really force the government, but you are the ones who are selecting the government. So make your vote count. Understand कि आपकी local government, आपकी local political leaders के climate strategies, के environmental strategies क्या है. वो क्या बोल रहे हैं कि वो climate change के लिए कर सकते हैं, उस basis पे वोट करिए. जहां हो सकता है लोगों को अवेयर करिए. टॉक अबाउट क्लाइमेट चेंज, ऑल दीज थिंग्स दैट वी टॉक्ड अबाउट टुडे. You can very well go and discuss this with your family, you can discuss this with your friends, you can discuss it in your community. Tell people about why this is important. Get more people concerned about this because we need more people to act on it. And also there is know where you are putting your money in, right? A lot of us nowadays are trying to diversify our income, are trying to diversify our investments. Read about the companies that you're investing in. What is their climate strategy, what is their sustainability strategies. All these companies are required to come up with reports कि उनके पूरे साल में उन्होंने किस तरह से सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को हेल्प किया है, या उन्होंने अपने कंपनी लेवल में अपने प्रोडक्शन में किस तरह से सस्टेनेबिलिटी को इनकॉर्पोरेट किया है, किस तरह से उन्होंने अपने कार्बन एमिशंस रिड्यूस किए हैं. Read about these reports, and try and encourage more industries, more companies that are doing good, that are taking good measures for sustainable development and for climate friendly climate friendly development. So all of these things we can do at an individual level, but we can also take a lot of action collectively. Things जो हम personally अपनी lifestyle change करके कर सकते हैं, we should definitely try and do that. But apart from that, we should try and get our community also active in this space, because collective action has a lot more power for change than individual action does. So whether it is as simple as encouraging your society to have a community compost bin or a community waste segregation, or you have a community rainwater harvesting system installed in your society, or it could be as big as coming up with a group of citizens, uh, you know, coming up with petitions, talking to your local government leaders, and getting them to, take better, more ambitious action for your cities, for your towns. If you have connections or if you know people in industries and companies, encourage them to take more sustainable action within their companies and their production systems, or get these companies to fund projects or fund programs which are happening at the local level for either mitigation, adaptation, resilience, all of these things that are going to help solve the climate crisis. So that is what I'm talking about, that, we need that momentum. We need to spread the word. You guys are all, in your teens or in your 20s. You have a lot more work to do. You guys are going to go into the OCOY in the next coming days. You're going to interact with a lot of your local government leaders, come up with good strategies, come up with collective solutions for how Odisha can become, a climate friendly, climate smart state, and, and become an example for the rest of the country, perhaps rest of the world as well. That is all in your hands, because this is our lives, but it is also a question of your future. And with that, I'm going to end the presentation. And I would just ask you to reflect on whatever we've discussed today and think about how can you take climate action not only in your individual lives but also as a collective, as a group of young people. How can you increase your climate action? And with that, I'm going to end the session. It was lovely speaking with you guys, and if you have any questions, do let me know.
Thank you, ma'am, for the presentation. We can now open the floor for questions. Maybe we can take up 2 to 3 questions as we are so short on time.
Yes.
Participants may ask the questions by unmuting themselves, or they can write in chat.
There are two ways that I can interpret this silence. या तो आपको इतना अच्छे से सब समझ आ गया कि आपके पास कोई क्वेश्चंस नहीं है, या तो आप लोग कोई ध्यान ही नहीं दे रहा था कि जिसकी वजह से आपके पास क्वेश्चंस नहीं है. So I don't know which out of the two it is. I hope it is the first one rather than the second one.
Hi, I am Priyanka.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask just one question about mitigation. Can you just explain me once again with one example that what is exactly mitigation about?
Yeah. So mitigation is, अगर आप dictionary definition देखो तो mitigation means to reduce something, to minimize something. So in that very crude sense, when we talk about climate mitigation, it means to reduce and minimize greenhouse gas emissions. Now that can mean कि जो greenhouse gas emissions हो रहे हैं from industries, from power plants, from vehicles, वो greenhouse gas emissions को हम किसी तरह से कम करें. या तो हम हमारे प्रोडक्शन सिस्टम्स को ज्यादा एफिशिएंट बनाएं, या हम ऐसी एनर्जी सोर्सेज यूज करें जो ये एमिशंस कॉज ही नहीं करती हैं, जिनको हम रेन्यूएबल एनर्जी बोलते हैं. या तो हम वो एनर्जी, जो फ्यूल्स हैं उस पे डिपेंडेंट रह के एनर्जी एफिशिएंट सिस्टम्स बनाए. सो दैट्स वन वे ऑफ मिटिगेशन. बट देन देयर इज आल्सो अनदर आर्म ऑफ मिटिगेशन और अनदर ऑल्टरनेटिव ऑफ मिटिगेशन, जिसमें जो ऑलरेडी ग्रीन हाउस गैसेस, खासकर की जो CO2 गैसेस है, वो CO2 गैस जो एटमॉस्फेयर में ऑलरेडी प्रेजेंट है, उसको किस तरह से वापस खींच के उसको, we stop it from causing more climate change related greenhouse effect. And that can be done by planting more trees, by conserving our water ecosystems, जैसे कि plants जो पानी में है, they also capture CO2 for photosynthesis. So more green cover. और देर आर दीज टेक्नोलॉजीज जिसको कार्बन कैप्चर एंड स्टोरेज बोलते हैं, जिसको आप अगर if you Google search it, you will find a lot of explanations for what exactly carbon capture and storage में होता है. So these are all examples of mitigation. Most prominent example of it is one is energy efficiency. हम सबके घर में I think गवर्नमेंट का एक बहुत ज्यादा पुश था कि पहले दे सेट के वो हैलोजन वाले बल्ब से CFL वाले बल्ब्स में आए, क्योंकि वो एनर्जी एफिशिएंट है. और अब CFL वाले बल्ब से दे आर आस्किंग अस टू शिफ्ट टू LED bulbs because LED bulbs are more efficient. So in the same way, the government is also suggesting they will subsidize the money that you have to pay in order to put solar rooftops. So if you see a lot of houses, they have अपनी छत के ऊपर उन्होंने सोलर पैनल्स लगाए हैं. व्हाट दैट डज इज दैट द सोलर एनर्जी से जो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी बन रही है, that reduces the amount of electricity that would have otherwise been produced by burning coal. So these are all examples of mitigation that are happening right now, which we are seeing in our own cities, in our own neighborhood. So yeah, that is what mitigation is. I hope that helps.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
There are a couple of questions. Okay. Okay, somebody has said, please explain about adaptation. Okay. Adaptation is it is adjusting, or it is dealing with a particular change in your environment. So, when you have floods, a very simple thing, न्यूज चैनल में आप देखेंगे, they usually blame the municipality कि उन्होंने अपने ड्रेनेज सिस्टम्स को ठीक से नहीं लेआउट किया है, या ड्रेनेज सिस्टम साफ नहीं किए हैं. So creating better drainage systems is one way of adapting to floods. क्योंकि हम लोगों ने इतना अर्बनाइजेशन कर दिया है, कंक्रीट जंगल बना दिया, इसके लिए वो पानी को नेचुरली सॉइल में जाने की जगह नहीं मिलती है. या तो नेचुरली इट डज नॉट हैव अ पाथ टू गो इनटू अ रिवर और गो इनटू अ लार्जर वाटर बॉडी. So in that case, municipalities need to take that sort of action at a civic level, at like a urban planning level, जिसमें they have to improve their drainage systems, जो कि उन्होंने बॉम्बे में कुछ साल पहले किया था, बट नॉट दैट इफेक्टिवली. टू इम्प्रूव दैट ड्रेनेज सिस्टम, सो दैट जो भी बारिश का स्टॉर्म वाटर है वो इजीली ड्रेन आउट होके बड़े वाटर बॉडी में जा सके, so that it doesn't cause floods. That's one example of adaptation. On the other hand, जैसे मैंने बोला कि early warning systems are also a type of adaptation, जिसमें बिकॉज हमारे वेदर मॉनिटरिंग, वेदर फोरकास्टिंग सिस्टम्स इतने इम्प्रूव हो गए हैं इन रिसेंट ईयर्स, हमको पहले ही पता चल जाता है कि चेन्नई में फ्लड होने वाला है बिकॉज ऑफ हैवी रेनफॉल, या वेस्ट बंगाल उड़ीसा में साइक्लोन होने वाला है. सो दोज अर्ली वार्निंग सिस्टम्स वार्न पीपल पहले से कि ये इवेंट अकर होने वाला है. अगर हो सकता है तो आप सेफ जगह पे जाके छुप जाइए, या तो अपने वो रीजन को एवैक्यूएट करिए जहाँ पे ये इम्पैक्ट ज्यादा फील होने वाला है. सो दैट इज ऑल्सो अनदर वे ऑफ अडेप्टेशन. somebody in the beginning of the presentation had also mentioned कि वो प्रमोट करते हैं क्लाइमेट रेजिलिएंट फार्मिंग, विच मीन्स कि जब हम हमारे क्रॉप्स, हम हमारे अनाज जब ग्रो करते हैं, तो वो सॉइल में से कुछ न्यूट्रिएंट्स यूज कर लेते हैं, और वो न्यूट्रिएंट्स को रिप्लेनिश होने में टाइम लगता है. दैट्स वन थिंग. तो वो उसको रिप्लेनिश होने के लिए हम ऐसे क्रॉप्स डालें जो वो न्यूट्रिएंट्स को रिप्लेनिश करने में हेल्प कर सके, सो दैट एग्रीकल्चर जो है वो कभी भी हार्म ना हो या इफेक्ट ना हो. ऑन दी अदर हैंड, अगर कोई रीजन है जहाँ पे ड्राउट्स बहुत ज्यादा आते हैं या फ्लड्स बहुत ज्यादा आते हैं, तो आप ऐसे क्रॉप्स वहां पे उगाइए जो ड्राउट्स में उग सकते हैं, या जो पानी के कंडीशन में भी उग सकते हैं. अगर फ्लडिंग हो रही है तो राइस जैसे है वो उग सकता है. सो दैट इज अ मोर फ्लड रेजिलिएंट क्रॉप. या ड्राउट रेजिलिएंट क्रॉप्स वो है जो बहुत ड्राई, कम पानी वाले सिचुएशन में भी ग्रो हो सकते हैं, तो उस क्रॉप को प्रमोट करिए. सो दैट्स ऑल्सो अनदर काइंड ऑफ अडेप्टेशन. आई होप दैट आंसर्स योर क्वेश्चन. Okay, I'm going to take this as the last question to explain what greenhouse emissions are. So do you guys know कि greenhouse क्या होता है? आपने देखा होगा कोई गार्डन में गए हो, या अगर कोई फार्म लैंड के पास में हो, तो दे क्रिएट लाइक दिस स्ट्रक्चर जिसके अंदर प्लांट्स होते हैं, जिसको यूजुअली कांच से ढका जाता है या किसी क्लियर प्लास्टिक से ढका जाता है. अब होता क्या है कि अगर कांच से इसको ढका जाता है तो दैट ट्रैप्स हीट, तो ह्यूमिडिटी और हीट ट्रैप हो जाते हैं वहां पे, तो जो प्लांट्स हैं दे ग्रो इन अ बेटर कंडीशन. सो अर्थ के अराउंड भी वैसा ही एक ग्रीन हाउस बना हुआ है, एक ऐसा कांच का लेयर बना हुआ है जिसको हम एटमोस्फियर बोलते हैं, जो हमारा एटमोस्फेरिक लेयर है. एंड व्हाट दैट डज इज कि जो सन की रेज हैं वो जब अंदर आ रहे हैं तो वो हीट जो है उसमें से वो उसको ट्रैप कर देती है. वो गैसेस जो है हमारे एटमोस्फियर में, दे डोंट लेट दैट हीट गेट आउट इनटू द स्पेस, दे ट्रैप इट इनसाइड नियर द अर्थ सरफेस, जिसकी वजह से हमारा टेम्परेचर is good enough for humans and for all living creatures to survive in. पर ह्यूमंस की एक्टिविटी की वजह से ये जो ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट है, जो ये हीट ट्रैप कर रही है, ये बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ गई है, जिसको हम फिर ग्रीन हाउस एमिशंस बोलते हैं, बिकॉज इट इज कॉजिंग दिस इफेक्ट दैट इज कॉल्ड द ग्रीन हाउस इफेक्ट. ओके. So I don't think there are any more questions, and I also don't think we have a lot of time. I think we can keep discussing about this topic for hours and hours together. But yeah, it was lovely interacting with you. I hope you guys have a lovely conference to come. You can always reach out to me at the Climact Initiative. You can also follow us on these social media platforms. We have a lot of interesting webinars that are soon going to come up. And we would really love to have you guys come and participate. That it will help you learn a lot more about climate change and climate solutions. So I really wish to see some of you or most of you in these sessions as well. Just follow us on these platforms, and I hope to stay connected with you in some way or the other. And all the best for your climate action efforts.
Thank you, ma'am, for those insightful answers. And thank you to everyone who participated with their questions. This has been a highly informative session on climate change, and we hope you leave with a better understanding of the issue and the actions we take. Before we conclude, I would like to remind you all to stay connected and continue the conversation. You can follow us on social media and visit our website for more resources and upcoming events. Thank you once again for joining us. Have a great evening, and let's work together for a sustainable future. Thank you.